Well, thank you very much for inviting me to share my creative journey. It was really quite a process, sort of going back in time and really looking at my roots and how I became a painter today. I started out at art school doing a foundation course, and which actually enabled me to create a portfolio so I could apply to Central School of Art and Design. Wasn't quite sure initially what I would do because I loved sculpture, I love painting, I love ceramics, you know, I wanted to weld. So foundation in England gives you a year to explore all these different creative paths. And what became apparent was that I was really suited to be a theatre designer because it was a little bit of everything. You get to make maquettes, you get to create backcloths and paint, and you get to create costumes. So, and props. So this made when I was assistant to Ralph Colty, and for an opera called Die Soldaten. That was the first slide, and that was a production that was at the Lyon Opera House. Here we have director Peter Gill, Hammersmith Studios, some early sketches I did for the costumes for Julius Caesar. They were all made out of like sweat fabric, cotton fabric, and then we dyed and had big vats and were able to create all these really comfortable costumes for the actors, and kind of playing on period, but you know, just really very, very active wear because the play was just done in such a contemporary active way. Next slide. I also worked with props for the production. A great thing about living in London is that you have all these amazing museums. So anytime you work on a show, you can get all the research you need and find anything to copy. And we ended up doing retractable daggers and big wooden banners and maps. So here's some examples of that. Next slide. Hammersmith Theatre, great theatre, proscenium arch theatre. I ended up coming on board as a designer for a show with director Lucy Parker. And what she would do, she would work with at-risk youth, kids recovering from drugs, kids that needed to find a voice. And through their collaborative, I guess you would say, acting workshops, they would write these plays and I would storyboard alongside. You go to the next slide, and you can see early designs for this play. And you know, you didn't really know where it was going because every week it changed, and it became a 6-week workshop, and by the end of it we had a set and it was built, and then the show ran. Next slide, please. And here's the production of Get Out of That at the Hammersmith Theatre. If we could go back to...
Back?
Yeah, we went a bit fast there. We need to go back. Back again. Yeah, back. Yeah, back again.
No, so, it's not going back.
Yeah, it is. Oh, it's going forward. Oh. Okay. Yeah, if we could go back to the Hammersmith Theatre, because I think we've jumped about 10 slides.
I know. I'm trying to figure out how to get back. It's not doing that for me. Let me escape.
Okay.
Back here?
Back.
Here?
Okay.
You want here?
Yes.
There.
Okay.
Yeah. Forward. Comes up. Storyboard that I would.
You're cutting out, Kerrie.
Cutting out. Oh,
I can't hear you.
I can. Oh. It says reconnecting.
Computers, don't we love them?
Oh, I know. I'm wondering.
Oh, I can hear you now. Is this where you want to be?
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay, so this was the Hammersmith production of Get Out of That. Now we'll go to the next slide. Here you can see some early preliminary storyboard sketches for a production of Danton's Death, which is at the National Theatre, directed by Richard Eyre. The next one, please. And the model box, always had to make a model box. Directors always want you to have a model box so they can place, move, and see how, you know, the scenes are going to work. And I would build the model boxes too. Next one. Storyboards for Danton's Death, very early storyboarding for me. It was a big part of being in the theatre. You would tell the story in pictures. So, you know, using my drawing skills, this actually was a good example of a storyboard to share. Next one. Some set designs here for the Government Inspector, directed by Richard Eyre at the National Theatre. Next. And costume designs. Next. So that brings me up to 2001. So I moved to the States in worked in commercials, all different aspects of my art, and worked at the Second Stage Theatre. Don't have any pictures of that, and ended up moving up to Santa Barbara as a single woman with 2 children. And this is where I began Art Walk for Kids Adults. So this was my non-profit that ran for 16 years. So the seeds that I planted with theatre design with at-risk kids, I ended up working with at-risk kids here at Los Prietos Boys Camp. And I also work with developmentally disabled and handicapped artists, and lots of different projects, theatre design, art shows, art programs. Next one. Next slide. I think it's the same one. Oh, and next slide, please. And we also did Imardinari, which is an annual festival here where we chalk on the streets. We did that for 10 years with at-risk and developmentally disabled together. And we were part of the
Not catching
we
it.
found that there was a gap. Hello?
Okay, we lost you for a minute.
Oh, after school programs. I wrote after school programs for the county because a lot of kids couldn't go home after school. And create murals for their put them on the wall schools, and we did all the bathrooms, redid all the bathrooms. So the kids were really proud of their school. So that kind of brings right up to it was time for me to start painting. After working for so many years with others, creating and painting, I began a new body of work called Light Patterns. And this really came about because of my environment and where I live and my walks on the beach. And you can see here, I'm trying to show you how I create geometric underlay structure, and then I color the layers with cloud-like patterns which flow through and across and really sort of change the boundaries and the surfaces, you know, to communicate this light and this color and this patterning that I perceive in my environment. And there's quite a few of them. If you'd like to flick through, Shelley. Here's another one, and I've shown sections of it and how I build it and create these light patterns. And you can just go through all of those if you want to and show them. If you have any questions, you know, I'd love to share it with you. More of the light pattern series. And these are all ongoing series for me. What I do with all of my series of arts, I return to them. So here's a series called Light Patterns Morning Glory. These are very large. They're 60 by 72, and they're really sort of moments of the day that I experience when I'm out in the mountains, I'm by the ocean. So it could be the springtime, it could be summer. This is one I'm working on at the moment called Dawn, and there's going to be a series of 10 of those. These are slices of paintings, and I'm showing you all the patterns that I create. These came about, if you go to the next slide, and I'm going to look at my screen because for some reason I can't always see everything. Yeah, equipoise. So in these paintings, there's about 15 of these, and these came after the light patterns. And also, these came before COVID, because quite a few people have said to me, "Are these about COVID?" But they're not. They're about making reference to a world that is really changing all the time. Incredible leaps of technology and strains upon the environment. And through these paintings, I'm communicating the technology and the nature and how I perceive this landscape that's continuously changing. And I imagine these portraits of organisms that can last for, you know, forever. So if we could go through these, you can see quite a few of them.
I have a question. You use a lot of pointillism, like these dots.
Yeah.
And are you using them for a specific reason rather than, I mean,
Yeah.
it's very controlled.
Yeah, it's almost like for me, it's almost like a meditation. I don't want the hard edges, you know. I'm trying to create light. I'm trying to create pattern. I'm trying to create balance. But with all of these pieces, there's you know, because they're mirroring each other, there is a certain balance there as well. But there really are these sort of imaginary, like this one, spring. This came about from the poppies and the lupins and the mustard seeds, and it's my way of interpreting the light and the nature that is all around me. Does that help? Does that
Yeah,
make
this seems like a new series that you're working on. This one.
Yeah. This is equipoise, and yeah, I've shown a few of them, you know, different galleries and spaces. And this one,
I have a question. It's acrylic, right? That you're
yeah, I'm working with acrylic with these, and I'm working on wooden panels. Yeah.
I would like to ask a question also, if it's all right.
Yeah.
Kerrie. I'm really interested in obviously you're building up these surfaces. You start with flat colors. How do you? I'd love to know a little bit more about your process. How you build.
Yeah, so I start with small, like doodles, sketches in my sketchbook, and I create a pattern that resonates, and I mirror it, and I start to paint those. And then you can see on this one, Equipoise 10, then I start to go in and create these patterns and these layers, and I just keep building and building until I feel that I've completed. It's a lot of visual information, and almost it overstimulates. But it feels like I have to keep pushing and pushing and pushing, and by layering and layering I can do that. It's almost like cells, you know, and light.
Kerrie, did you come upon the mirroring just because you were attracted to it, or so often I think mirroring sort of enters one's practice, or certainly one's perspective, when you're working with images digitally? And I'm just curious, did you discover it in one realm and then bring it to painting, or is it just a coincidence that mirroring is occurring with a lot of digitally made images?
Yeah, I think, yeah, that's a good question. I didn't do these digitally at all.
No, I know
These-
that. I'm just wondering if you
later
discovered how
yeah,
fun they are.
yeah. Oh yeah, later on you'll see some photographs that I have worked on digitally.
Okay.
Kerrie, I've always found that, can you not hear me? Oh, I've always found that.
Yeah, I can hear Pamela.
That if it's symmetrical,
I can't.
if it's symmetrical and mirrored, it has sort of an archetypal strength. And I think that's what your work has, but then it also plays with kind of an asymmetry too, like this one has a symmetry behind, but it's all asymmetry in front.
Yeah, and trying to find that balance, you know, it's like, it's very hard, you know, the world and technology and all the overstimulation that is around us. It's like I'm trying to find the balance within it. So creating initially that symmetry and then pulling it apart and pushing it together, you know, it's like a journey that it becomes very physical for me. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Kerrie, Linda here.
Yeah.
Are you using wax resist or some kind of
No,
process?
no, nothing like that. I just use paint and I dilute and I layer, and
Are
then
you
I
scratching out
use
the circles?
my pointillist.
Are you
Are you
scratching?
removing it all
Sorry.
to get back to another layer?
No, no, I haven't been doing that at all. Not body of work anyway.
So how are you getting the circles that are
Can you hear
lined?
me?
Sometimes.
I paint everything. I use brushes, I take brushes, I cut brushes, I change them, and I use brushes for everything. I don't use any gadgets. I don't spray through a gauze or, you know, everything, even with my big panels, everything is painted by hand. And I work in a rhythm, and I'm, you know, a lot of it is just very visual spatial. I have this, you know how it is, we have this idea in our heads and we're trying to express something you know, through that idea. So this series, Equipoise, is trying to find that balance in nature.
What does equipoise mean?
Equal.
I
Trying to
just-
keep equal.
I have to say this
Equipoise.
it's gorgeous. It is so, the depth that you accomplished, but it also feels almost like some of those dots that are the ones that are most popping out. It almost feels like they could have some little bead embedded in them. I don't know if you've ever done any embedding in the drops of paint, but it's just so gorgeous, your colors, and yet the depth, and it's just, I just especially love this one. It's just
Thank
gorgeous.
you.
So much
But
movement.
if you touch them, you can feel, you know, because I'm layering and with the you know, the focal dot, you can actually feel my paintings. I had a small child come into my studio, and she said, "Can I touch?" And I said, "Yes, touch everything." So she was literally rubbing her hands at everything. Of course, it was dry and sealed, but she loved it because she could feel it. And that's sort of coming into my more recent work, which you'll see later as we pass through. I really am getting very, very layered and building it up because I love that. Yeah, I like the idea of beats too, but at the moment it's just paints.
Kerrie, what kind of paint do you use? What brands? And do you
I use Nova. I use Nova.
Okay.
Yeah, I really like Nova. And you know, I dilute it a little bit and make it milky as well. Sometimes I'll put a panel on the floor and paint it flat. Sometimes I'll easel.
Is it okay?
And I even go outside.
Is it okay that I'm going?
Yeah, yeah. No,
Okay.
please. Like here, you can see where I've you know, put it down all these patterns and sort of squeeze these layers in, and then I've started to make my almost like vapors, which come after this body of work. But I start to put in all these patterns and shapes and build it up. And often I'll take a chalk and I'll just very gesturally draw all over it, and then that becomes the next layer.
Are you disciplined about taking the photographs of the layers, or do you end up
Yes,
missing
yeah.
something that you are sorry
Yeah.
you didn't grab?
No, I always do. I have albums which show the process of each painting. I may have
Okay.
15 images for each painting. Now, the Rebirth series came about because after the fire, you know, generation of everything around me, I felt, and all my walks saw so many plants that were dead and up in the foothills and burnt, and in Mother Earth I just felt this huge rebirth. So I started to paint the last one, Rebirth.
We lost you. We lost you, Kerrie.
Okay. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I was
Yeah.
saying that the Rebirth series came about because after the fires, you know, everything was just so charcoal and burnt, and so many plants disappeared. And then I started going out and I just felt that nature rules, you know, Mother Nature rules, you know, everything is growing again. So this was all about rebirth for me, and it's very much, very symbolic, of course.
Beautiful.
I think there's three of them that I worked on, and they're all on wood, and again they're very tactile. When you touch them, you can feel, you know, you feel it, all the different layers.
So why do you choose the pointillism technique?
Well, I don't in everything, but I think early on, you know, that was my main way of creating my feeling of light, of layering, without solidly breaking things away. I mean, when I take walks and I see the light on the land, to me it's light patterns. So that's why I went with it, and it just became a way for me to communicate this experience that I was, you know, having. And I go back and forth, you know, it's still in my work even today, but it may not be quite as persistent.
Can I ask a question about your Wi-Fi? Are you on Wi-Fi?
Yeah, I'm on Wi-Fi, and I've never had problems like this, so I don't know what the heck is going on.
Okay.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, you're just breaking up sometimes. So we'll find you.
So okay, so these are sketches. I went to Iceland and went to the Outer Hebrides of Scotland, and the weather was just unbelievable. I mean, you've got so much on Iceland, so much melting snow, and it's so vaporous. Sometimes you can't even see your hand in front of your face when you're on a trail, and then suddenly it's clear and it's blue and you can see for miles. So this whole experience, and you can flick through these if you want to, Shirley. I had to, you know, do some small studies so I could take that feeling with me, the feeling of the light, the feeling of the ever-changing landscape. And so I did a series of small studies, and then I developed them into a new series called Vapors. So if you keep going through this, you'll see how that grew. And then I started working on aluminum, because I love the way the light would hit the panel and it would change, you know, from morning to afternoon to evening. So I started bringing in crystal and glitter and layering and really trying to communicate that ephemeral landscape of these countries. And these are very much, you know, if you go back one,
I don't know if I can go back, but I can go forward. How's this? If we stay here?
Okay. Yeah, they're just very land driven, all of these. Yeah, that's fine. So I just had a show actually called A Session with Mart with Marta Pont and Diane Silva, the sculptor. And it was all based around the three of us, called a session. And Andy Campanoni was the curator. And I had a lot of these panels in this show. And this is Vapors. So you can see that, you know, my work is evolving. It's changing all the time, just like everybody else's. But it's very much nature driven. And I'm commenting about how being in places like Iceland and the
I'm curious, Kerrie, you're painting on panels of aluminum. Are you the acrylic? Do you have to do any special prep for painting on the aluminum so the acrylic doesn't just come off?
I haven't. No, I've sealed everything and it's really durable. And I did use gesso in some areas underneath, but yeah, it's really
so
sealed.
You cover
in.
it with like acrylic gel after, or what do you seal it with?
Yeah, and I do, well, I use a matte varnish too, and I just layer that on as well. And some areas I don't, you know. So there's a lot of light movement in these paintings because they're on the metal. And this has just been a very, you know, just a different surface to work on for me.
Mm. And
there's some close-ups of that larger panel. That's a dawn, very early morning walk.
And your choice of the word vapors.
Yeah.
What do you associate with vapors? Because
vapors for me is moisture. It's moisture that comes and it lands on my face and I feel it. And for me, vapors just was the best way to describe it.
Alrighty.
And because I was traveling and having these experiences at the Hebrides of Scotland and such climate change at the moment, there's much rain and moisture. I mean, there's always been rain in, you know, Iceland and the British Isles, but even more so now. And you're constantly feeling this moisture. So that's why vapor came about the time. And that was a way I could communicate it. And then out of the vapors came portals. And, you know, portals during
we lost you. We lost you, Kerrie. Kerrie?
We missed what you said about portals.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes, that's better.
I don't know why this is doing this. Okay. Portals came about during COVID. These are all works on paper and Tyvek. They're collages. They're quite small. They're like little moments within those vapors, little moments when I'm walking on the beach or across the land called Mura Mesa, where I imagine these small landscapes that emerge from these very, very gestural, very quick brushstrokes that I do. And I'm now developing these into banners, into large banners, which are going to be probably like, you know, 12 feet tall. And I'm going to paint them on diaphanous fabric and fly them like flags and put them in a landscape because I want to do an installation with this. So these are all the vapors. And they were also in a session. And you can see some of them have underlay. I've started to play with photography with these. And when I was doing call and response with Christine Schumacher, I really, this is a whole group of them in the studio. I really wanted to take my paintings and take my photographs and bring them together. So I created a new body of work called Gifts of Nature. And these were the little treasures that I found on my walks daily in my neighborhood. I started to reflect on, you know, all the changes that are happening on our planet and really feeling thankful for all these things that are just literally on the ground as you walk. And I created this grouping for one of my call and responses called Gifts of Nature.
Is this photography?
Yeah, it's taking photography, and it's also taking some of my paintings as well and layering them in.
And you do that on computer.
What program are you using, Kerrie?
Hold on that one.
Kerrie, what program are you using on the computer?
So I used Fused. So you hear me?
No,
Hello?
no.
No.
Yes, we can hear you.
Yeah, can you hear me? I used Fused. It's an app called Fuse. So I took my photographs of plants and nature and seaweeds, and then I literally fused in other paintings, or fused them and melded them and reflected them, and, you know, just generally explored all the possibilities. And this just became a big series for me called Gifts of Nature.
Very strong.
I ended up doing the same thing with Christine, just, you know, bringing them in and either painting on photographs or layering, compositing, making lighter, darker. But I figured, you know, you have you know, so many images, and it can be just fun to quickly play with them and see what happens.
Yeah. And it became like a diary. It became like a workout every day. You could do a piece, and it was just a really healthy thing for me to do during a difficult time. So this brings me to a new series called Flora Ficcioni that I started about 3 months ago. Ruth Ellen Hogue has a gallery called Grey Space, and she curated and hosted the show for Lotus Land, which is a beautiful garden in Santa Barbara, and they do an annual fundraiser, and they invite artists to create pieces. So I did this piece called Flora Ficcioni, and patterns in plants, slightly fantastic, appearing vividly real, inspired by California gardens. And I've named each one after a woman. So the first one was Gana Wolska, and I make up words. So it's Gana's Glorietta. The next one, and these are all on wood, and they're quite tactile. If you touch them, they're quite three-dimensional because I'm layering the paint. This one is called Escalapia Bourgeoisia, and it's after Louise Bourgeois. So I'm continuing on with these. The goal is to have quite a few of them and not sell any more of them, because I really want to have, you know, a whole series so I can do a show. And this one is called Dina de Lancia Desconcita, and it's named after Dina Caparelli, who's a friend of mine and also a painter, and it just made me think of her, the colors, and for other reasons she came to mind. So now I'm celebrating all these different women that I know through my paintings, and I'm working on a new one at the moment. I don't know, I'll show it to you later maybe, but so that's my plant, my vividly real flowers. Here is a curatorial project. I'm the president of the Arts Council for the Westmont Ridley Tree Museum of Art. It's called Wit and Whimsy, the garden. And last year during COVID, I decided to get involved with some of the wineries out in Santorini. So now I'm in sculptures by artists. This is Luis Velasquez's piece, Airplane. It's blue steel, and it's about 12 feet high. And that's already situated. And the second one is a sculptor called Paddy Firestone. If you'd like to go to the next slide. And we have
Oh, we lost you, Kerrie.
Kerrie, years ago, Paddy Firestone, before they moved east, was here in Santa Monica. And like yourself, she ran, I think it was called West Side Arts. And, you know, she did this wonderful after school program and enrichment program for kids throughout the Santa Monica West Side, West area school districts. I think my kids participated, but that's how I got to know her, you know, like decades ago.
She's wonderful. She's a wonderful
She is,
person and
yeah.
a wonderful sculptor. So I'm continuing with that and finding other wineries that would like to have sculptures in their gardens. It just seems a natural, you know, to have all these wineries and actually make them destinations for art. And then my most recent project is a community outreach project. It's taken me about a year, 75 artist studio visits, and it's artists and their dogs. And that will be published next month. The museum will publish the book. And in the book are all the stories of the dogs and the stories of the artists. So that kind of brings me to the end of my creative journey. Thank you for allowing me to share it with you.
That's wonderful.
Yes, thank you.
All right. Thank you so much, Kerrie. Wow.
Phew.
Wow. What a journey from making your artwork as stage design. Now you're doing these community projects. Wow. Amazing. Just beautiful.
Yeah.
Anybody have any comments or questions? Let's see.
I put some questions in there.
Well, I'm blown away, and I have a very mundane question, but I'm wondering if you listen to any music when you're painting.
I
creating.
I listen to a lot of music, mostly on Pandora, because I love all the different stations. I also listen to podcasts, and I listen to artist talks. I'm dyslexic, so reading for me is a bit tricky. And because I rather paint than read, I have things going on around me. Yeah, definitely.
Okay.
And I love my studio, and I love my studio time. So yeah, it's my sanctuary. Yeah.
Thank you.
Kerrie, I'm just interested because I listen too. I'm also dyslexic, but my problem is when I do art and I listen, especially to not music, but something very
Distracted.
I get distracted and I'll miss the end of a sentence. And usually it's the most important word in a sentence. You find that's true?
All the time. But the great thing is you can rewind. And you can pause. You can make it work for you.
The other thing I was interested, it seems that the studies that you do for your artwork, I felt like that may have come from your storyboard times. That my father was a cartoonist. He was always working on storyboards, and so it made me feel that it was the same kind of a transition to study to real. Anyway.
Interesting. But I do repeat things, definitely. And with a storyboard, you are repeating, a set, and you're moving the characters within the parameters of the set. And maybe in a way I'm creating the set with my painting, and I'm moving the characters of my patterns within that. I think that there may be a tie-in. And also I think being a costume designer in the theater, often the patterns in the garments, I can see that in some of the underlay of my paintings. It's almost like corsets and kimonos and period pieces. I see that too. And often when I do the underlay, I'm not sure if I really want to go on top of it, because I get all attached to that underlay, and I look at it for a week, I'll move on to something else, and then I'm all excited again to come in and change it all up with lights and what I perceive as these patterns that are going on all around me.
Since you had light, if you were influenced by the Pointillists and how they tried to make it vibrate, did you have a love of the Pointillists?
Well, yeah, I mean, that, I knew about Seurat, of course, being an art school student, but I never thought of myself as a pointillist. When I started doing this, for me, it was just so exciting to play with color and texture. And it was just a starting point, I didn't really think about it that much. It was 2016. I was walking the beaches. I was looking at the sun on the ocean, and I was distorting everything. And it just felt like a natural thing for me to start doing. And, it's still there. And the patterns are still there, but it's always evolving and changing. And now I'm really excited to do some installation. I really want to make some panels now and go outside and do these big, big, beautiful brush strokes. I've even cut up the brushes and got them all ready. I've taken big paint brushes from Home Depot and I've cut into them and made shapes, trails, and I'm going to put them on and then paint them really large and gestural, and I even cut into the panels, sew and texture these portals. This will be my next grouping. I'm just up the energy to do it. It's going to be big energy, this project.
Kerrie, I wanted to say something about when I look at when you started was equipoise. How do you pronounce it?
Equipoise, yeah.
Equipoise, okay. So equipoise, it's really it's really about pointillism, but it's more static. So it's really about the light, and then you have those dots are almost the same type, and they don't seem to be moving. Now, when you go the next one, you are introducing those lines on top of those lines that look like snakes or like worms. And it's a movement, it's not so static. So and then you go even further again, and that's why I understand why you're talking right now about getting out of the canvas or the background, and then getting so vapor, for example. Vapor is really going to the sky, you can feel that you are getting freer. And the other one is really contained. The first one, is beautiful, and all of them are beautiful, but they have a completely spirit. And so I like also the portals. The portals, and it's interesting because you have the lines are really freer, as I said, but you still keep a center because you have that circle. The circle is the anchor. Is that the portal? And then you have those lines that are really, really free. And now you're just saying, okay, I'm going to do vapor. In French, vapeur means steam. So what you are doing, which is absolutely amazing, is that you have something bidimensional, two-dimensional, and then you all of a sudden it's like the painting is rebellious. The painting is saying, I don't want to be contained, in that space, and I want to get out of it. And so you see those incredible, and they are going from the earth to the sky, and they are rebelling, and then it's really spectacular. It's amazing. And now I can't wait to see what you're going to do with the light.
I know, it's finding the surface.
It's going to be the wind, and the wind, the wind is going to be your partner, and floating, pushing. It's going to be amazing. So wonderful work.
It's going to be a whole year. I know that. It's going to be a big project for me. And it's just beginning it and deciding, what am I going to put this on? Am I going to use a gauze? Am I going to use a silk? Am I going to use a parachute? That's what I'm researching. I don't want to canvas. I would love to recycle something. That's why I'm thinking old parachutes, because I love all the seams on them, and I can use those seams within the brushstroke.
Have you seen the movie by Borislav Radovanovic and Jason Jan? Have you seen it? The other one who curated the show in Angel Gate.
Yeah, I know Jason.
Jason. And so this movie is about, you see, not Jason, but his partner, Borislav. And so the title is The Wanderer. And then you see him carrying this flag. you know, and he's walking in nature
Yeah.
with a flag, and the flag is made out of a very light and transparent type of fabric, and there is a drawing, something. So what is beautiful, and you see that flag, it's so, it's almost like, I don't know how to say it, but it floats, and so it creates all types of lines and forms.
Well, maybe we could all meet out somewhere, and I'll make them, and you can all carry one on a pole, and
yeah,
we'll
but of course, what you are doing is going to be completely different, but it's just something to look at because somebody tried to do something similar.
Thank you so much, Martha. You always have great insights. Thank you.
You have a lot of insights. You're amazing.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
Kerrie, the mark making that you're doing is such, you know, there's a growth there from your stage design to the, you know, pointillism is very structured. You have a lot of structure, and now it's, again, you're being free. Yeah, see that, and that next step doing, wanting to be out there and free with all your mark making. It's very inspiring. Your work.
I feel more liberated now. You know, I'm not so constrained. I'm not in this
Structure,
canvas, in this box.
Wow.
I feel like there's been a huge awakening for me in the last year personally.
Transformative.
Yeah.
I would predict that it's not a year's project. When this energy gets activated, I think you're going to be astonished how much gets made so quickly. And you may be spending a year figuring out where it goes and all that. But I think once the energy is unleashed, unless that wonderful stage discipline keeps you, you know, allotting it in a very programmed, you know, planned mode, it could be really, you know, it will be fun. It will be different than, it's a wonderful journey.
Thank you. I hope so. Well, I know it will be. Yeah. Thank you.
Sandra, I know when you get going on this, all this preliminary work, once you've got, you know, like if you use the parachutes and all, I know you've been thinking about that. Once you get started, I can just see you just going through it. You will not stop. I watched you look at all the things you've accomplished in such a small amount of time.
My
When
God.
Yeah, that's right.
So prolific.
Just see how this all goes.
Oh, thanks, Ruth. Thank you. Thanks for everybody's support.
I just want to go through some of the comments, and somebody said, Karen said, I would like to hear how you build your colors and textures.
That's a good question. Well, ta-da!
Are you using wax resist?
What I do, I feel like I'm an alchemist because I get all my paints, and then, you know, I get the paints, and then I start doing all the mixes and making all my colors, you know, even though there's all these colors, there's all the Kerrie colors, and, you know, some of them are like cream and some of them are like custard. You know, they're all different thicknesses, which, you know, really helps me with the layering and building. And, you know, paint, it's just been paint that's really just taken over my life for the last 5 years.
Are you using any wax? Linda Levy wants to know if you're using any wax resist.
No. It's just paint and ink, and I draw, you know, I've even used graphite within my paintings. Yeah. And crystal, I get this glass crystal that I use too, that I layer in.
Nice.
You know, whole mix of things. I'm experimenting, you know, with
What
the
about
vapors. I've experimented
medium?
quite a bit with that.
Do you use a medium with your mixing?
Yeah, sometimes I do. I have a whole, you know, selection of Nova. I have a matte medium, I have a Nova super gel, I have gel top coats, I have matte varnishes, gloss varnishes. So I have, you know, I have quite a selection. Never quite sure how they're going to work out. So that's why I really like making these. They're like little jam preserves, you know, and I can keep them for, you know, 2 weeks at a time, and then they dry out, of course. But so when I'm working, I keep notes of paints and things. And
Right.
when I'm
So
gonna do them.
Monica Mark says, I love that you allow for the tactile sensory experience. And Nancy says, thank you so much. Your work is gorgeous. Marta Feinstein says, Kerrie, beautiful art in so many ways, forms, styles, and media. Love the colors and emotions. Your set designs are wonderful. I used to be a set designer. So you two have something in common, Marta. Marlene Strew says, I have to say I was blown away by the many of the works, but especially the Icelandic studies. Your expressionism looks to be informed by the patterns within a very intriguing effect.
Thank you.
There you go.
Thank you, girls.
Thank you.
I think, thank you so much, Kerrie. This was an incredible journey with you. I really appreciate your experience and your time, and everybody that participated in this talk.